This is the Ripple Effect of Wellbeing in Work and Life. I'm Dr. Ken Thompson, here with Dr. Stephanie Romero.
On this show, we explore how holistic well-being practices can transform our individual lives and our collective capacity for care.
We're bringing you the science, the stories, and the specific practices that reduce stress and build resilience in our homes, our offices, and our communities.
We're talking to people to see how their perspectives, practices, and work are creating a ripple effect for a better world.
Thanks for joining us.
Welcome back to the Ripple Effect of Wellness. When we think of meditation spaces, we usually picture quiet rooms, maybe being out in nature or a comfortable yoga studio. But what happens when you take mindfulness behind bars? Today, I'm joined by Gary Crouth of the Stillworkers, an organization that brings meditation and emotional intelligence training into the Allegheny County Jail using the Path of Freedom curriculum. Gary's own journey with mindfulness began deeply at the Zen Center of Pittsburgh, where he trained for over a decade under teachers Kyoko Roberts and Nonin Chawani. But his background might surprise you. He actually spent 30 years working in corporate America as an environmental engineer before retiring to become what he beautifully calls a human at large, a musician, and a volunteer. Today, we're talking about the reality of teaching meditation in a high-stress environment, breaking down stereotypes, and what a jail cell can teach us about true inner freedom. Let's dive in. Well, Gary, it's been a while, I'll say that we have since we've been in conversation, and I'm really excited about deepening, getting to know you and deepening our relationship through this conversation. And thank you for joining me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, my pleasure. You are a person who has been working in our area to bring practice to folks, especially through the group, the Stillworkers. And I have had the great pleasure of working with that group. Many years ago, I was thinking about it as I was preparing for this call, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think that was 2013, something like that, when I was volunteering with you all. But I don't think that I've ever had the chance to really hear your story about how you came to practice. So I would love to hear that.
Well, of course. I would say it started in the late 70s and early 80s. I became interested in Eastern thought and philosophy. So read the Autobiography of Yoga, of a Yogi, I think was the first book I read. And that transitioned into Alan Watts reading about Taoism and Zen. And in the early 90s, I started practicing Tai Chi, and I considered that to be my spiritual practice. And then I took Tai Chi lessons at the Friends Meeting House there in Oakland. And I was at Tai Chi one day, and I happened to look through the series of doors from the meeting room to the outside. And I saw this figure, this bald figure with robes on. And I just became very curious about what I had seen. And on my way out of Friends Meeting House, I noticed a poster on the wall saying, Intro to Zen classes available here at Friends Meeting House. And I noticed that there was only one day left that they were going to be meeting there. So I took down the information, I wrote to the email, and it was Kyoko Roberts who was giving these lessons or this workshop at Friends Meeting House. So I wrote to her and I said, look, I know there's only one day left, and I'd like to come. And she wrote back and she said, you're certainly welcome to come. However, I'd like to meet with you first to bring you up to date on what you missed. And so she invited me she was living then at her parents' house in Sewickley Heights. So I drove out to Sewickley Heights and met with her, and she told me about meditation. She told me about the things I'd missed. I went to the very last class and sat zazen with the group, and it just wasn't clicking for me, Stephanie. It just I remember sitting there in meditation thinking, oh, this is awful. I just can't wait till
That
this is
was
done.
not the answer I was
This is not
expecting.
what I'm looking for. And so after it was over, I remember distinctly thanking Kyoki for her time. I thanked her for her time, and I left there with no intention of ever pursuing it. I told myself, well, I tried Zen. That's not for me. And before we left, Kyoki told the group, if you're interested in pursuing this, give me a call early next week because I'm going on a cruise with my sister. So, but Stephanie, early that next week, I found myself calling her. Something happened. Something happened within me, and I ended up calling her and saying, I do want to meet with you again. And so I continued to meet with her at her parents' house until we started renting a place for Zen Center of Pittsburgh, which was in Bell Acres, and then we finally moved to the place where Zen Center is now. But that was how I started practicing with Kyoki Roberts, and that was in 1999. So that's how I got into it.
Wow, that's a great story. I love that. I love it. I was expecting you to be like, I sat and it all opened up and but
Nope.
actually, I know. And the funny thing about that is like I had the same thing happen to me. So like I had this idea that I wanted to meditate, and the first few times I meditated, I was like, what the hell am I
Yeah,
doing? Like my mind is crazy. Why would you want to sit and notice all the stuff that's happening? Like,
right.
because it's not great.
Why does anyone do this? And then you find out.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, that's a great story, and Kyogi Roberts, such a lovely, lovely human. So
Yes,
what a nice thing that she was your entry point to
yes.
meditation,
She
and
she certainly was. She
it,
changed my life.
yeah, yeah. Practice changes our life for
Yes,
sure, for sure. Yeah, and that's kind of a great segue because once we have experienced the gift of someone teaching us how to practice, at least for me, this is true, then you want to share it with other people. Like it naturally kind of oozes out of you to want to, like, this has been such a gift in my life. I hope that I can help other folks, share it.
absolutely.
Yeah, I guess I would love to hear a little bit more about your work with Kyoki Roberts. And, Zen is very specific. And so maybe talk a little bit about why Zen for you, right?
That's
Why
that's
that
a very good
particular.
question, and I've
Yeah.
I've thought about that because in recent years I've been practicing with all of the various groups in Pittsburgh. We have wonderful Theravada temples here, Bante Pema up in Allison Park, and out in Monroeville, the Thai community. We have various Zen groups here. We have, of course, Temple Lama in Greenfield, and and the Tibetan Center, which is now out in White Oak. And so I've had a chance to practice with these different groups, and I think that's helped me answer this question for myself, why Zen was particularly helpful. And I think one thing I needed the discipline of Zen. Zen is very stripped down. All of these practices, all of these Buddhist practices share the same basic teachings. And so so the differences end up being more style than substance. And I think for me, I just needed the simplicity, the starkness, and the discipline that Zen has to offer without very much entertainment or something that could be interpreted as entertainment. There's no, there are no flags, there are no long chants to be entertained by. It's just all stripped down. So that's the answer that I've come to myself. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the answer that I've come to.
No, I like that. I like that. And so I have experimented with a whole bunch of different traditions myself, and I think that's a great way to sum it up. I think that's a really wonderful way to sum it up. And I'm curious though, is there something in that that has led you to want to share it with others? Something
I
in
wouldn't.
either it, working with Kyoki Roberts and that tradition or something else in the experience. Like, what do you think motivated that?
Well, I think simply that my experience with practice has improved my life so much that I would like to offer that to others. It just seems almost imperative that once you practice and you come to a certain, whatever level of realization that we are all interconnected, that when you help others, you help yourself, that the distinction between self and others really becomes different than what you thought before.
Yeah, that's real, right? That shift that we sometimes feel. So I guess I don't know, is there anything else you want to add about working closely with those teachers through the Zen Center? And I guess, I'm thinking about people listening that maybe don't really understand what it means to work with a teacher.
I I will add that I started off with my path talking about reading books, and I think that's a very typical thing for particularly people in the West. We think that we can read a book and understand something. And what I realized after meeting Kyoki and her teacher Nonan, uh, who I also was very very fortunate to spend some time with, uh, I realized that it's really the experience of working with a teacher and working with other students that is the value. That you can learn certain things from books, but uh, really the experience of practice comes from working with a teacher and working with a Sangha, a community of practitioners.
Yeah, that's so good. Rich. So I'm curious, um, why steelworkers? Why that particular avenue? Why, and I don't even know the story behind steelworkers. I just know, I don't even remember who it was, Catherine Pepper maybe, or Veronica, that was like, you should come and work with us in the jail. And they like brought me. It must have been Catherine back in the day. And they were
Most
like,
likely.
come, there's this group. And like, I don't, yeah, like, so maybe talk to us about
Okay,
that.
I'd be happy to. It was purely a synchronicity, a set of synchronicities. In about 2011, Catherine Gammon moved into the Pittsburgh area and wanted to see if there was enough interest to start a chapter of the Buddhist Peace Fellowship in Pittsburgh. She was familiar with that organization with her from her time in California, and so she started having some meetings with interested Buddhists about, hey, should we start a Pittsburgh chapter? So that's what we started talking about. And then that segued into talking about engaged Buddhism. And in addition to, or maybe instead of pursuing the Buddhist Peace Fellowship chapter here in Pittsburgh, is there something that we can do as Buddhists to help our community? And while we were pondering that question of what to do, the Allegheny County Jail, the chaplain at that time, uh, wrote a letter to Kyoki, actually. And the letter said, hey, I'm writing this to you as a Buddhist temple. I'm the chaplain here at the jail, and we have many, many Christian volunteers. We have Muslim volunteers. We have Jewish volunteers. We even have a Native American volunteer. we don't have any Buddhist volunteers. Where are all the Buddhists? And so Kyoki sent that letter on to Catherine because she knew that we were meeting as a group and talking about engaged Buddhism. And a group of us went to the jail and met with the chaplain. And still workers, our work at the jail kind of grew out of that meeting. And Catherine Pepper was actually one of the first people to step foot in the jail as a still worker.
Yeah. That's awesome. That is a really great, I love that story. Yeah, that's so good. So I'm curious then, when I was working with you all, it was through delivering the Path of Freedom curriculum,
Yes.
which,
Yeah.
Fleet Mall and Kate, I went through that training, and Fleet was
Yes.
here in Pittsburgh, and,
Mhm.
I went through the trainings that he delivered while he was here. And so I'm curious then, from that original conversation and kind of starting to go into the jail as volunteers, how did you end up connecting with the Path of Freedom and Fleet?
I believe that our first efforts there at the jail were more of a practice in the chapel. I believe it was with the men, and it was getting together and talking and meditating and practicing in that way. And I don't know exactly when we started teaching Path of Freedom, but I know Catherine Pepper was intimately involved in bringing that part. And so right now we teach Path of Freedom on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, we visit the Buddhist inmates that we can, as well as other inmates that have requested a visit from a Buddhist chaplain. On Thursday evenings, we have a men's Buddhist group in the chapel where men come down and we do a check-in. We do a little bit of movement, a little bit of qigong, and then we do a 20-minute seated meditation, 10-minute walking meditation, and then we sit back down and then just see what comes up. Sometimes an inmate wants to share what happened during meditation. Sometimes someone will have a question or a comment, and we do that, and we just pursue that until towards the end of the session, and then we always do a dedication of merit to dedicate the merits to all beings, and so it's about an hour is what we spend there. We also have a secular women's group. We call that the Interfaith Women's Group, and that meets on Wednesday afternoons now. So those are our activities. We also teach Tai Chi. We have a Tai Chi teacher as part of our of still workers now, and he goes in on Tuesday mornings and teaches Tai Chi on the Hope Pod.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you guys are doing quite a bit there in
There are
addition
13
to.
of us now in the group.
Oh, nice. That's really good. Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah. Um, I'm curious about what you think the impact has been. Like maybe there's a particular story of someone or a moment or a student, something that has stayed with you of someone that you've worked with that you think demonstrates the kind of impact that this work has had.
There is one story that comes to mind, and this was in the men's Buddhist group. One week we were talking about loving kindness meditation. May I be happy, may I be well, may I be at peace, and then expanding that out to people who are close to you. May my friends be well, be happy, be at peace, and then eventually out to people maybe that aren't your friends. And we did talk about that, and an inmate reported to us that he was having trouble with a correctional officer on his pod. So he did a loving kindness meditation, and he started with himself and eventually got out to this correctional officer that he was having a problem with. And this inmate confided with us that he felt something shift within himself, the more he did this loving kindness meditation. And he actually went up to the correctional officer and apologized for how he was contributing to the problem between the two. And the inmate told us how that made him feel. It shifted something within him doing the meditation that led to the apology. And he was being very sincere about it.
That's beautiful. And I often, yeah, I think metta or loving kindness meditation is so powerful for so many people. I love that story, the fact that you're bringing that to them, because I really believe that it does shift our energy so much. When I guide meditation, it's one of my favorite things to guide, and very frequently that's what people report, is that they feel things shift in them, from that
Yes.
practice. And good, like, so good to hear that it actually resulted in some kind of tangible behavior, I guess is what I'm thinking, like it not just changed someone how they're feeling, but actually how they're showing up in the world, right?
Exactly.
That's beautiful. Yeah,
Exactly.
really wonderful. Um, I I also think about, um, you know, we like this term, the ripple effect. That's the name of the podcast. It's what we call our newsletter, because we really believe that helping support mental health and well-being for one person creates this ripple effect out into their family, their community, through other folks. It really extends healing, and in this case, your example, loving kindness, out to other people. And I often hear in the media the framing around incarcerated folks is not one where, how do I want to say this, like where they're even valued, that should be something we should offer them, right? So I don't know, I
Right.
guess I'm really curious around how you frame that for yourself.
Sure. Our incarcerated folks in this country are among the most marginalized folks that we have. And I know a basic tenet of my group, of the steelworkers, and something that we talk about constantly, and especially with new volunteers, is that when we go into the jail, our primary contact is with inmates. However, we are there for all beings. We are there for the inmates. Yes, we're there for the inmates, but we are there for the inmates' families. We are there for the inmates, the cellmates of the inmates and the other people on the pod. We're there for the correctional officers. We're there for the staff of the jail and all of their families as well. And we try to really practice when we're there in that way. When we go onto a pod, we always talk with the correctional officers and remind them that we're there for them too. And I've had correctional officers want to talk and tell me about what their day's been like, or some things that have been happening. So the ripple effect is real, and we really try to when we're there, we practice with that in mind.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that was coming up for me when I was asking the question, but also in hearing your answer, is that, what you had said before, that the interconnection of all beings. So we can't assume because we have housed folks separately in a prison or a jail that they are not still somehow connected with all of us.
They are, absolutely, and that's certainly the feeling that you get, the sense that you get, that I get from being there.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, they're still, even if they are incarcerated, they're still connected to their families. They're still connected to their communities. And in the case of the jail, most of these folks are not there for the long term. You
Well,
know, it's
that's a
not a
good point.
federal prison, right? It's not a federal prison where they may be locked away for the rest of their life for 30 years or something like that. The jail is much more transitory than that.
And not only that, Stephanie, but something that not everyone realizes is the difference between a jail and a prison. And in a jail, most of those folks have only been accused of a crime, and they are there because they can't afford bail, a lot of them. And so they're there because they're poor. And um, and so most of the folks that we work with have not been have been accused of a crime, but haven't been convicted of a crime. And it is supposed to be a short-term thing, but some folks stay there for years, even though it's supposed to be a short-term thing.
Yeah, thanks for reminding us of that because I think before I volunteered in the jail, I don't think I knew that either.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think I actually really understood that either. And that is real for people. They're awaiting their trial.
A lot of them are awaiting trial or
Yep.
awaiting sentencing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Folks don't realize that. I mean, when the inmates that I talk to who have been in prison, a lot of them will say that they would rather be in a prison than in the jail.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the jail, there's no outside. They can't
Right.
go outside. The programming, there is programming at the jail, but it's not as extensive as what they have in a prison. Commissary is not as good in the jail as in a prison. So there are many reasons why some of these inmates say that they'd rather be in a prison than there.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Is there anything else about the work that you're doing with still workers or in the jail that you wanted to share or talk about that I didn't ask about?
I don't think so. I did want to make sure that we talked about the difference between a prison and a jail. Um, I guess the other comment I'd like to make about that is that sometimes when I am talking to an inmate, I get this, particularly in visits, because we tend to be during visits we can talk more about. I can find out more about their personal life than in the groups. But as talking to inmates, I oftentimes will realize that if just a few little choices, life choices, or circumstances, that our roles could have easily been reversed. That I could be in the jail and they could be the Buddhist chaplain, and that's a chilling thought.
Yeah, I think that resonates deeply with me. So much. Like, I think culturally we are always kind of pushed to take credit for our successes, right? That somehow we individually are responsible for all of our successes, but you're pointing out something that I think is a deeper truth that our life circumstances, the maybe good fortune of having people who supported us or had means or fill in the blank there, access to education, like so many of our life circumstances have created the situations and the conditions that have allowed us to have a path in life that did not lead us to the jail.
Absolutely.
And just as easily, we could have been born into a situation that could have led us in a different direction
Absolutely.
of no volition or action of our own. Like I think that's really, really true.
And it's especially striking when you're sitting across the table from someone whose life choices and circumstances have led them to such an extreme living
Hmm.
condition as
Yes.
being inside of a jail.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. 100%. Wow. I I don't know if you know, but we are also doing programming through Awaken in the jail through their reentry programming.
I am aware of that, and
Oh, cool.
with Robert Wilson,
Oh yeah, with
who
Robert,
is
exactly.
who is also part of this of
Yes.
Steelworkers.
Yes, exactly, with Robert. Yeah, that's right. Pittsburgh. I forget who knows who. If anyone's listening that's not from Pittsburgh, we often joke and say it's only 1 degree of separation here in Pittsburgh. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the difficulties of folks like just being in the jail is one thing, but then helping support folks as they consider exiting is a whole nother thing, because I'm just thinking about just the way that you named like the conditions of living in a jail where you don't really have any freedoms of choice of movement. You're not making decisions. What do you wear today? What do you eat today? What do you cook? All of those things. And then suddenly you're out and you're expected to manage everything in your life again. And, you know, possibly put back into circumstances that led you there in the first place. That
Yes. Now there are resources available, and
of course.
um, so the Foundation of Hope is really the organization that we
Yeah.
volunteer for. So
Right.
steelworkers, when we go into the jail, we work with Foundation of Hope folks to teach on the Hope Pod. They teach Path of Freedom, as well as the chaplaincy program there in the that's based in the chapel. All of those staff folks work for the Foundation of Hope. And Foundation of Hope also has an aftercare program that people who are released have access to. And Foundation of Hope is there, located on the north side.
Yeah, and I remember for maybe they're still doing it. They were pairing people with mentors like outside. I don't know if they're still doing that, but I know that was just a really wonderful connection that they were making for some folks to meet someone before they came out, right? While
Yeah.
they were still in, and then have someone who was a mentor. Yeah, so they do have great, great resources. I guess I was just more thinking about like what a challenge, right?
Oh,
For a person to have to make that transition and kind of turn their life around all at the same time.
absolutely.
Huge, huge challenge. Well, Gary, was there anything else that you wanted to make sure we hit on in the conversation? Either about Buddhism or practice or
Well,
your
I know
work with soul
one of your
workers?
questions was whether I have any books or other kinds of resources
Yes,
that I
I was
would
gonna get, yes,
recommend to
you
folks.
can
And
go there.
I thought that was an intriguing question, an intriguing
Yeah.
issue. And what I would say to that is that, and I think your question was for me personally, were there books or
Hmm.
resources that helped me with my spiritual path? And when I pondered that question, that issue, what came up for me was that what really helped me along my spiritual path, rather than books or resources, was the opportunity and the great fortune to work with really, really good teachers. I mean,
Yeah.
Kyoki and Nonan were absolutely top-notch Zen teachers. So I had the great fortune to meet them, and also the great fortune of working within a very a very good Sangha. So
Hmm.
my brothers and sisters in at Zen Center when I was there were just wonderful people to practice with, and I would say that combination of a great Sangha and great teachers was wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess, maybe that I don't know if all of the folks listening are familiar with Buddhism or not. Like I think we have a lot of folks that aren't, but I think that's why in Buddhism, we talk about the three gems, right? Because we
Right.
have the example of the Buddha or the teacher, right? Which the teacher and the Buddha are together in a lot of traditions, right? So the
Yes.
Buddha, and then we have the teachings themselves, and then we have the Sangha, which is the community of practice. And those are the three things that support us on our path. So I think you are just naming exactly that.
Right. Exactly. No, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I really try to emphasize this with the folks that I work with at the jail, because I mean, a lot of them want to read a book and somehow get it, you know? And I tell them that really, that's not the path. You're not going to find it in a book.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned some really wonderful locations here in Pittsburgh that are still active communities of practice with great teachers. So we're really lucky in Pittsburgh that we have, I think you mentioned the Buddhist Center and Omo Ling, and yeah, so the Tibetan Center, like there are lots of great places of practice here in Pittsburgh, and we have access to some really wonderful teachers locally. We're really lucky, actually, for our
Pittsburgh,
size.
Pittsburgh is an absolute hotbed of
Mm-hmm.
of Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm involved with the Buddhist Society of Pittsburgh, and so
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we do is keep a list of all the different sanghas in the Pittsburgh area, and once a year we have a VSAC ceremony, of which you
Mm-hmm.
participated in. I know at least one time
Yeah,
you gave
yeah,
a talk at one of our VSACs.
I
Um,
did.
and yes, we have wonderful teachers here and many different kinds of practice. And so I do encourage um, folks that I meet, whether they're inmates or not, that if they are interested in Buddhism, to go around and talk, to spend some time in some of the different sanghas and see what resonates. And then when you find a practice that resonates, then just stick with it.
That's right. That's right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gary. I really enjoyed the conversation and reconnecting with you because it has been a little bit of time.
It has been, Stephanie. I really enjoyed this.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.